So let's begin our first class today, right, on AWS. I
Yeah.
think the both of you have gone through the what do I say uh, the video, right, which I shared, right? Have you gone through it, Vijay?
Um,
Because in that I've given some introduction.
Yes, I gone through it. Yeah.
Okay. So please just give me a minute. I'm having some problem, I think. Just give me a minute, guys. Yeah. So let's begin, right? So we were talking about AWS, right? So we understood. I explained, right? So what is AWS? So basically, it is providing some IT services, right? Which is provided on demand and as a service, right? So we understood what are the IT services. Like you have storage, right? Servers, right? Databases, right? Security, right? So all these things AWS provides. It's not a single service or a single product. It's an umbrella of services, right? Same thing applies to any other cloud platform like Azure or the Google Cloud or any of those things. Okay, so I hope that part of it is clear. Okay, the next thing is we are looking forward towards the exam, right? The solutions architect exam, right? So the first document I would
yeah.
recommend you download, right? So what I recommend is in the class, right? Please take some notes, at least the headings of the topics which I say, right? I will share the links or whatever,
Okay.
but I will show you how to uh, find the answers or find the information. At least take notes of the headings so that you can, what do you say, go back and you can just open the documentation and read or while practicing, right? Please take notes, at least the headings of the topics I'm going to say. So the first document I want you to uh, uh, get is called the well architected framework, right? So all these are AWS documents, right? All are available for free, right? So the well architected
Okay.
framework, you can go here and say well architected framework, right? It will take you to the AWS thing, right? You can just scroll down, you can go through this information if you want to, right? Or you have the framework overview over here in HTML or PDF. If you want to read online, you can use HTML or click on PDF, right? And you can go through this page. It's hardly 100 pages, so probably in a week you can finish it. It is just high level, it
Okay.
does not have any complicated stuff. It's just like common sense stuff, right? We will cover all these things, but for you, like notes or a book or a reference, because from the exam point of view, this book will be very useful and even high level from practical point of view, right? Like a quick guide, what we need to do, what are the things we need to look into, those type of things, right? So you can just
Okay.
go through this book a few pages every day. Okay, so please get that book, what do you say, that document from the well architected framework uh, page on AWS. All these are free, you don't even need AWS account to access the documentation. Okay, so the next thing is coming
Okay.
to creating the AWS account, right? So have you guys created your AWS account or you're yet to create?
Yeah,
Yet to
already
create.
created.
Okay, so no problem. So AWS account. So it is not a big deal creating an AWS account. It is pretty straightforward. I cannot create and show you the account because I already have two accounts, right? Because to create the account, you need a payment information, but I'll just show you the steps, right? It's pretty simple. Go to aws.amazon.com, right? So anybody can create an AWS account. It is free of cost, right? There is no cost for as such creating the account. All you need is your email address and a payment method. So without a payment method, you cannot create an account, right? By default, it is compulsory. So it's pretty straightforward. You go, you give your email address, right? You give your password. Sorry, what happened? Right? You give your account some name if you want to, right? And just say right? And please choose personal, right? I mean, there is no big difference as such, right? All the features and things are available, right? Professional is if you're creating in a company, otherwise you can use personal, either one you can use, right? But make sure you give the proper information over here, because sometimes they will ask you, they will not activate your account, right? They will ask you to provide an ID proof or something like that. It's been happening for some time now. Earlier it was not the case, but from past 2 or 3 years, a lot of people are using. So once in a while, they might not activate your account. They will ask you to provide an ID proof via email or fax. Okay. So I'm not saying it is compulsory,
Okay.
but it is possible. They will ask you. You will get an email, right? Yeah. If you get, you have to provide that information. So you can give your phone number, right? Whatever the country, all
Okay.
that, put the correct information, right? Right. You can say create account. So my account will not. So here you have to put your card information. Otherwise, you cannot proceed, right? So once you do that, you can say verify an ad, right? So probably 1 rupee or something will be taken out from your account, right? To check that your card information you have provided is correct, and then it will be refunded back. Okay.
Okay.
And then after you create your account, usually it is activated within 1 hour, but sometimes it might take as long as a day, right? Which is what I said. You might get an email asking you for your ID proof or something. Mostly it does not happen, but sometimes it does, right?
Okay.
But within 1 day,
Okay.
your account should be activated and you can start using the the services. So please create the account as soon as possible. Okay. So these are the
Sure.
steps
Okay.
to create the account. And one more thing, after you add the payment method, right, you will have a step where you have to choose the support plan, right? For the AWS support plan, please choose the basic support plan. I think it is by default, but make sure it is basic because it is free. If you choose any other support plan, you have to pay additional money for that. We don't require it at the moment. We'll talk what is that support plan and all that stuff. But please choose the support plan as basic. Make sure it is at basic, right? They have other support plans like developer, business, right, and enterprise. All these cost money. You just choose the basic uh, support plan. It is free. Okay. So and then your account is created. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the next topic. So it's going to be a lot of introduction, high level, right? What is AWS today, right? So after you create your account, what is the next thing you have to understand, right? The next thing you have to understand is something called the free tier, right? So I told you AWS account is free. Anybody can create an AWS account. They will say free account, but it is just marketing. Free account means you cannot do anything. It is just you have created an ID password to log into AWS, right? So what does AWS provide? It provides us some services. We will just call the services ABCD. We will assume there are 3 or 4 services called ABCD, right? So I told you in AWS it is providing the services on demand, right? Which means if you want the service A, you can use. If you don't want, don't use. Right? Similarly for all the services, and they have some cost, right? Depends on the service, right? So if it is, for example, storage, it will be something in GB, like say some dollar per GB. If it is a virtual machine, it will be some dollar per hour, right? Something like that, right? So it depends. The billing varies depending upon the service, but it costs some money, right? It's like your
Okay.
phone. If you make a local call, it is at some price. If you use the internet, it is at some price, right? Something like that. So depending on the service you use, you pay accordingly. But AWS has provided something called a free tier. Free tier, what does free tier mean? It is you get some stuff free, right? But with
Okay.
some limits, right? Suppose you take your phone plan. So it will say 100 minutes per month is free, or 100 SMS is free per month, right? So what does this mean? So the first 100 SMS will be free. Beyond that, you can send 101 SMS also. If you send 101, what happens? 100 is free. For one, you have to pay, right? Suppose you send only 80 messages, you don't pay anything, right? In that month, right?
Yes.
So same thing in AWS. Free tier is for each service, you have some limits. If you don't cross those limits, it is free. If you cross the limits, you have to pay, right? They are not going to block your account for the free tier, right? So it is not like you create an AWS account, you can use only free tier. You can exceed the free tier also, right? So you have to be careful. It is not like if you exceed, they will stop. They will not stop. It's like your electricity at home, right? If you keep the fan on and you go out, still the bill keeps running, right? You cannot come and say, I didn't use the fan, I was not in the house. It does not work like that, right? So your AWS account is eligible for free tier, right? New AWS accounts are eligible for free tier, right? For the first 1 year, or as they said, 12 months, right? Free tier is not always free tier, right? So these services you get free with some limits, not all services again. So AWS has hundreds of services, right? So a lot of services are covered under free tier. At least 85 to 90% of the services are covered under free tier. So each service will have some free limits so that you can use, practice, and get a feel of it. So it is more than enough for practicing for most of the services. So here and there you might have to spend a little money. So if you're careful, your monthly bill will not exceed $2, right? I'm saying, I cannot say it will be zero. It will be misleading because some services don't come under free tier. But if you're careful, your monthly bill for practicing for the class or whatever will not exceed $1 or $2, assuming you practice 2 to 3 hours a day. Okay.
Okay.
So free
Okay.
tier, it is not totally free. It depends on service to service, and for a lot of services, it is only for 1 year. For some services, it continues, right? For a lot of services, free limits expire after 1 year. For some services, they continue forever, right? So it is only for new AWS account. So in my account, I don't have free tier. I mean, I have some services which always have some free limits, but in general, I'm not eligible for free tier because my account is already more than a year old, right? So please use your own AWS accounts, because there's no point two of them using the same account, because you don't get any benefit, right? It is free. So each
Right.
of you have your own account. Each of you have your own free tier limits. If you use the same account, then both of you have to share the limits. So there is no point in sharing AWS accounts. Okay. So please create your own account. So what is this free tier? We will talk in detail as we go through the services, but let me just show you at high level, right? AWS free tier. So all information is available on AWS itself. You don't have to look anywhere. You just have to know the topic, put it in Google, go to the official documentation, right? So here is free tier, what I just
Okay.
explained, right? So a lot of what do you say? All these are offers, right? It depends upon the service which you use. It is not a straightforward thing which says you have some $100 credit or something like that. It depends upon the service. Like for example, Azure gives you some credit upfront. You can use it for whatever you want. Here it is not like that. They don't give you any credit. It is, each service has some limit. So it comes under three categories. Like I told you, always free. Always free means it is not entire service free. Service with some limits which are always free, which don't expire, right? A few services come under that, but a lot of services come under the 1 year, what do you say, limits. The limits are applicable only for the first year. After that, you pay even for the for whatever it is, even for the first GB or first hour or whatever. And then you have some products which are like trials, some new service or something. They provide like a month trial or something like that, right? It depends. It varies from time to time. So you can you get the information over here depending upon the service. So all these are the AWS services: EC2, S3, RDS. So here you see, right? Suppose you're working on EC2, you want to know in the free tier what is included for EC2. Then you can come here and see, right? So EC2 you get 750 hours, and it is only for the first 12 months. Similarly, if you come to S3, which will be the first service we are seeing, it is also you get 5 GB of storage for the first 1 year, right? So it depends upon the service. So if you come to this service, for example, right, it says always free. What is always free? Only so much, right? It is not always free means totally free. It is free with some limits. It's not for just 1 year. It is always there for you. You can use up to this capacity always. If you exceed it, you pay for it, right? So here you have something called free trial, right, which is for a month or something like that, right? It depends upon the service. So similarly here, free tier always free for AWS Lambda up to 1 million requests per month, right? So it depends upon the service. Free trial always free. So you can filter over here and check. If you want to check only the services which expire after 1 year, you can filter accordingly, right? So you can't remember all these things, and again, from practical point of view, nobody is going to ask you how much is free, but you will learn that by experience, right? So all this we will see how to optimize this free tier and all that stuff, right? Okay, so here is what you get under free tier, right? So as we go from service to service, we will see what is there in the free tier, right? So you don't have to remember all these things, but from experience you will know, right? So the first service we will be talking is S3. Okay, we'll be starting S3 probably. We'll have time to start it after this general introduction, right? So
Okay.
I hope this free tier concept is clear, right? So almost every
Yes.
service will have some services are not there under free tier. You cannot say all services are there. Most of them are there. Some products or some services might not be under free tier. You pay for it from the beginning itself, right? We will see a couple of such services also, right? And then the billing, I told you the billing is based on the usage. Very important thing people have to keep in mind is billing. It's purely depends on your usage, right? If you are eligible for free tier, right, then for practicing mostly your bill will be 0. The bill is going to be monthly, and it's automatically taken out from your credit card, right? On the, I think in India, on 3rd or 4th of the month, the money gets debited from your account, right? Okay, so another thing is estimations, cost estimations. We'll just quickly get that out of the way, right? Cost estimations. So how do you know how much it is going to cost some certain thing, right? Maybe you're working in an organization, right? Something like that, right? You want to get a cost estimation. So basically, what are we going to use AWS for? I told you. So why are we learning AWS? What is happening in the real time? You are going to host something on AWS. Host means what? Some application, or you are going to store some data, right? So whatever is application means anything, banking site, shopping site, right? Your company's portal, whatever thing, anything on the internet, anything on the web, you are going to host on AWS, right? So to host something on AWS or to use something, right? Or you say you want to store your backups in AWS, right? So in an organization or something, you need to know how much it will cost you approximately. Suppose you have a project, right? Right, project A. So say it's some shopping site or something, right? So what is going to be there? Some application is going to be there, which is some code, right? Either .NET or PHP, whatever the developers are doing, and then it needs to be hosted on some infrastructure, right? What is infrastructure? You need servers, you need storage, right? You need a DB, you need some monitoring service, right? It depends upon what type of application you're doing, what services you are using, right? So you will have an idea about how much of each you need. All that AWS will not provide. If you are having an application which 100 people are going to use, accordingly you have to put the infrastructure, right? Accordingly you have to put the infrastructure. Now say according to your plan, you have some 2 Windows servers, say 100 GB storage, right? One Oracle DB, which is again say 100 GB, right? Some monitoring you're going to do, you're going to monitor the servers storage, right? So you will have some hardware planning or something like that, right? So once you have this requirement, if I put all this on AWS, how much it will cost me, right? You will need an estimate in real time, right? Simply people just don't go and start putting stuff on AWS. First they will check how much it is going to cost me, either for approval or to get a rough idea, right? So how do you get this cost estimation, right? So AWS provides prices for all the things on their online, right? You can just go, suppose you're using S3, you can say AWS S3 pricing, right? You see how simple it is to get the information. You don't have to look around or open any single page. You just put AWS followed by the topic, what you want, right? So here you get the pricing for S3. S3 is a storage service, so you pay so much. So you can take this, you can calculate, right? Suppose I'm using 100 GB storage for my backup. You can calculate for each GB it is 0.023 per GB into 100. But what happens is, if you are using a lot of services, so each one you cannot open one page and what do you say, calculate manually. So AWS has provided a online calculator. They have actually updated it. It used to be called a simple AWS simple monthly calculator, right? You can bookmark either of these links. One is calculator.s3.amazonaws.com. Another one is calculator.aws. Calculator.aws is the new one, but it's a little confusing, right? It's a new one. A lot of people still prefer the old one. I'll show you why. So here you see it is saying a simple monthly calculator. Is going to be what do you say? It's going to be deprecated. That is, it will no longer be updated or something like that, right? So any new services AWS adds, all that will be available in the pricing calculator. So both are similar what do you say, GUI tools, where you input your information and it will give you an estimate of your monthly bill. So everything is available on the same page in the simple monthly calculator. If you go to the pricing calculator, which is the new one, right, it is a little headache, because people used to the old one, they find this headache, because here each service you have to click here and configure, right? So whatever service you are using, suppose you are using S3, you can search for S3, right?
Okay.
You see it shows a lot of stuff, right? You can say configure and you can add how much you are using in S3, right? What type of storage you are using and all that stuff you add, right? And similarly you add for the other services also. Each service you go adding, you will get your monthly estimate, which is a new calculator. The old one, everything is there in the same page. If you are using S3, you click on S3, right? You add the information. Suppose you are storing 100 GB, you add 100 GB. You are using virtual machines, you go to EC2, you add that information, something like this over here, right? So it is all in a single page, which I think is still easier than going through the new one. So AWS keeps updating this stuff now and then. So, but it's pretty much the same. The concept is the same. What service you are using, how much you are using, you can input that information and you will get your estimate over here. It's just a rough estimate.
So just a clarification.
Yeah.
So here, as a part of like solution architect, okay, so they'll be majorly using this one, right? This thing to do either POC or for any proposals, right?
Yes. So to provide the cost, because first thing, even before technical people will look at the cost, right? So suppose your manager or somebody, they ask you to provide an estimate, or some project is there, you have to provide an estimate, right? So
Yeah.
you can export this into an Excel, right? Or you can create a link and you can share the link also,
Okay.
Where is that link? There will be an option over here to share the link. It has been a while since I used it, right?
Okay.
I think they have removed it or what? There used to be a thing over here where you can, what do you say, email the link to this page, right? After you add
Okay.
all the information, you can actually email it. I think they have removed it or what? You can export it as an Excel file. All that is okay, but you had an option to share. I think it has been removed now because this option has been deprecated, I think. Right? Otherwise, there used to be an option over here where you can email a link to your manager or somebody. They can click and they can open this page straight away. Now it is available on this new calculator, right? So this tool is used to estimate the cost, right? So you have to be aware of this, but it does not come in the exam or anything. But from practical point of view, you should know that you can use this tool to estimate your cost. But you have to know what are the services you use. You cannot say I'm hosting a shopping site, how much it is going to cost. Those type of things don't work, right? So what are the each component what you are using, you have to add that information over here. If you are not using anything, you can just leave it out, right? So it will show you your approximate estimate, right? Yeah, so you can use this save and share, right? It is over here, right? If you hit save and share, you can include the name and whatever, you can put something and you can hit OK. You will get a link, right? You can email this link to your manager or whoever. So once they open the link, it will show them whatever you have calculated, right? All this tool is free. You don't even need AWS account to use this tool, right? Here you see the calculator which we use. I mean, the link which I gave, I opened that link. It shows whatever you have estimated, right? You can either share the link or you can, what do you say, export it as a CSV and email it, right? So that tool is used for cost estimation. Okay. All right. Now we will get into the actual AWS stuff, right? Right. So we have an AWS account, right? So remember one thing, right? So AWS, how can you use AWS, right? You can use AWS either via the GUI or programmatically. These are the only two ways you can use. The two categories it falls into, GUI or programmatically. Under programmatically, you have, what do you say, you have the CLI command line interface, SDK, software development kit, APIs and all that stuff, right? All these SDKs and APIs are mostly focused towards the developer community, right? If you're developing an application using the AWS services, then you need to be more familiar about these things, SDKs and the APIs which they provide. The GUI is the AWS console. There is no other official GUI. The only GUI is the AWS console, which you see over here, which you log in via AWS console.aws.amazon.com. Everything else is programmatic. If you use any third-party tool, it is also programmatic. It might be a GUI tool, but technically it is still programmatic, right? The official GUI is only the AWS console, right? Everything else is considered programmatic because the credentials vary, right? For the GUI and programmatic access, the credentials vary. You cannot use the same ID and password for the GUI and programmatic. So we will keep programmatic aside for now, right? We will see that after a few classes, right? But the two ways to interact with AWS is through the official GUI or programmatically, which might be from the command line or SDKs, or if you are using any scripts and all that stuff, right? Scripts, infrastructure as code, All that is programmatically you're interacting with AWS via the APIs they provide, right? So the two ways you interact with AWS, right? There is only one official GUI. Everything else is programmatic, right? So when you created your AWS account, what information you have provided? You have provided your email address and password, right? So how do you log into AWS? Right? You go to aws.amazon.com, you hit log into my account, and you provide your email and password, right? So this account is called the root account. Okay, the username is not root, but the combination of your email and password which you use to create your AWS account, that account is called the root account. Okay, the root account has full access on everything. It has full access to everything. Everything means all services, all permissions, billing, everything, right? So you have to be careful. For now you can use this account to practice, but in real time nobody uses the root account for everyday AWS use. Okay, in real time you should not use the root account for daily administration or real time use. It is only used to create the AWS account. After that, what you need to do is you actually have to create, I mean, it's not compulsory, but it is a good practice. That is what everybody follows, right? You can log in with your email ID, password, and you can practice, no problem, because only you are going to use the account, right? For now you can use this, no problem, right? Everything will work. But real time, what happens is after creating the AWS account, obviously to create an account you need email address and password. So in your organization, what email you will use, it is recommended to not use any personal email ID or an individual's email ID. If you are using in an organization, right, suppose your name is A at whatever hcl.com, so don't use your account, or in general any person, they should not use their individual IDs, because tomorrow you might leave the company. Then if they deactivate your email account and then for some reason they need the AWS root account password, it will become headache. So in organizations, try to avoid using your individual IDs. You try to use your group IDs, something like IT team or something you will be having, right? So please use the group IDs, so that even if you leave the organization, they can still get mails related to the account, or they can still log into the AWS account, right? So try to use the group email IDs whenever you are creating a AWS account, right? So this account is called the root account. There is only one root account. You cannot have more than one root account. Root account is the email and password combination, and it will always have full access to everything, which is the reason you should not use this, right? The main thing when you talk about security, right, with respect to credentials or user logins, right, we should always follow the principle of least privilege. So what does this mean? If some person A, he needs to do some work X, then you have to give the permission so that he can do X. You should not give him permission to do X, Y, Z, right? Suppose you have a folder, that is a simple example, right? So you need to upload some files into this folder. So you go to your admin or whoever and ask, I want permission on this folder. What some people will do, they will give full permission. But what is required for you, you just want to upload the files, right? So full permission is not required. Even though it will work, you are giving excess permissions. You just need permission to upload. What are the other permissions? To remove, right? To overwrite, right? To rename. All these permissions you don't need. So you should not give these sort of access permissions in real time, right? Security best practices, right? So here when you come to the root account, you cannot control the privileges. Root account will always have full access to everything. You cannot modify the permissions, right? So root account is used only usually to create the account. After you create the account, you log in as the root, because you don't have any other credentials obviously, and then you create individual IDs. Suppose there are 6 people in your organization, say A, B, C, D, E, F. So all these 6 people are going to use the AWS account for whatever service they want. Then you have to create a credential for each of them. Say you are A. So even for yourself, you have to create your own credential. Don't use the root account. Root account is only for the first time for creating the account. Then you create your separate IDs, right? For A, B, C, D, E, F. For each person, his own ID and password, right? For yourself also, you create a ID and password, and then you log out of the root account. Keep it aside. You change the password for the root account. Keep it aside for emergency use in case you forgot your ID password or you want to change the billing information, right? For those type of things, you use the root account. You don't use it for everyday. What do you say? Use of AWS, right? And then you create IDs for each person. So what is the purpose for doing this? Everybody can log in as the root account. You can give everybody the root account ID password, but everybody gets full access, right? Or you can say, I will keep root account aside and I will create a separate account called say X. I will give this to everybody. Again, what is the problem? If something happens, suppose B is logging in and doing something, right? And then something breaks or you want to audit it. Then if you ask who did it, everybody will say I didn't do. If you try to check the logs, it will show that the X login has done all these things. So B can also log in as X, C can also log in as X, D can also log in as X. So you will not know who is the person who did it or what happened. So it is always better to create individual users. Even if B and C need the same permissions, create a separate ID for B, separate ID for C, so that when something happens or you want to do auditing or something, you will know who has done what. Right? It is not compulsory, but it is practiced in real time. Right? Creating these additional users is free. There is no money for creating users. It is free. So we will see how to create the users in a separate class. I'm just informing you in advance, right? So we will talk about this after we see 2 or 3 services, because without showing the services, if I talk about this, it will be confusing, but you have to know that, right? There is always only one root account, and you can create additional users and give them individual permission. So A, you can give full access, full admin privileges if you want to, if he needs it. If you need it, you can give yourself full admin access, but don't use the root account, right? In real time. Now for practice, you can just use the root account for the first couple of weeks. Then we will see how to create users, right? So you can give A full access, B you can give only to the database services. Suppose he is a DBA, right? C is a trainee, you can give him only the read-only access, something like this. You have to give whatever access they require to do their work. Afterwards, if you want, you can add. Of course, you can always add and modify the permissions. So never give too much permission. Just what they need, you have to give, right? Anywhere. It's not only for AWS, any service, any IT thing, right? You give only the minimum required permission so that the user can complete his work, right?
Okay.
If you have any questions, just feel free to stop me. No problem.
So,
Yeah,
Siddharth,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so for example, so if I'm creating, I'm logging into an AWS account, okay, with the email and password. I'm creating 5 users, okay. Just I mean high level. I'm saying 5 users. So when tomorrow I'm done with that. So tomorrow again I'll be logging to that same user, I mean email ID and password, right?
No. That's what I said. Don't use the email ID password is required to create an AWS account. Without that, you can't
Correct.
create an account.
Mm,
Right? So that email ID and password is called the root account, because
correct.
the first time you have to log in with that, you don't have anything else.
Yeah.
So first time you log in with that, and then you create additional users, and then you log out of the root account, change the password, because nobody needs to know the root password. Maybe only you and maybe the manager or whoever. Because what I'm explaining now
Okay.
is, you may never create an account in your organization. They might already have, but in case you have to create, or in your organization, when you go, they will give you your ID and password. You should know how to use it. They will not give you a root account, right? So what happens is, once you log in with the root account, we have a service called IAM, right, which is where you manage additional users. So you can go, or whoever is managing your account, they will do it somewhat like this, right? They will go, they will create a user, right?
Okay, so with that we will be logging in again. Huh?
Yes, you
Okay.
log out of root.
Okay.
Now here you see I'm not logged in as root. I've logged in as this user called demo.
Okay. Okay.
But this user demo has full access. So from here I can create additional users or whatever also. From here I can come and
Okay.
create a new user. But I will not use the root account. Even though I have access to the root account, I'm not using it.
Okay, got it.
Right? So you can create as many users as you want. It is free of cost. So each person you can assign whatever permissions they want. Right? So I have created an account for myself called demo, which I use for classes. Right? It is the same account. It is your same AWS account. You are logging in as a different user. You are not logging as a root user, because the root usually has permissions to everything. And if your root credentials they get misplaced, other people can they can do anything, because you cannot control the permissions for root. For this demo user, I can remove the permission also. But for the root account, you cannot remove the permissions, or you can modify. It will always have full permission. So root is only used for emergencies. In case I forgot my
Okay.
my user, my demo password, I forget, then I can log in as the root. If you forget the root password, it's like your what do you say, like your Gmail or whatever. You say forgot password, you will get an email, right? And you click the link and you change your password.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Hi, Sid. I have a question about this thing.
Yeah.
So, respective root account, generally, in typical in work environment, we are restricting some of the user login to the specific IP address like that.
Yes,
You can
you can.
restrict like.
Yes, you can.
Is it possible to make like this as a root account? For example, the root account should be logged in. These are the specific layers of IPs, not across anywhere are open.
No. For the root account, you can't modify anything. That's what I said. Root account is always full permission. I don't think you can
Okay.
assign any permissions specifically for root. But for additional users, now if
Oh,
I have a user called demo, I can say he can do the work only from some IP.
okay.
So if he tries to do it
Oh,
from his home or somewhere, it will not work.
okay. Okay.
So which is why you have to create that, because in some companies they restrict it like that also. For example, in my company, right? So I can't log into my company account or do anything from outside my company IP unless I'm connected to the VPN or I'm in the office, right? Some people
Okay.
implement it, some don't, right? Some will ask you to connect to the VPN and then log into your AWS account. Otherwise, it will not work. Something like that. So they can control. So some places you might not be the person controlling. Some places you might be the person controlling, but you should know how it works, right? Because sometimes you might have to ask for extra permission. Then you should know how to approach them, right? Because if you take big companies, how they do is they have multiple AWS accounts, right? We are just talking
Yeah.
about a single account, but if you see in real time, people have multiple AWS accounts. For what, there are different cases. I will give you a small example, right? So I have come across something like this. A lot of people are doing this. Say, for example, one recent thing I worked on is people, they have 4 accounts. I didn't create the account. Some client, they have their own thing. We just do the architecting or something like that. Some cases we create the account. It depends, right? You always will not get the root access or admin access. But how some people organize their what do you say, AWS architecture or these accounts is they have multiple accounts. Nowadays, most companies have at least 2 accounts because it is free. You can create as many as you want, right? So what happens is, what are you using AWS? You are using AWS to host something, right? Always remember this. You are going to host some application or some data on AWS, whatever it is, whether it is big data, database, server, right? Tomcat, Apache, anything, some IT service. So what do companies usually have? They have different environments, right? What is the environment? What we call it as, like, what do you say, uh, dev environment, right? Staging environment or pre-production, right? And then prod environment, right? You have come across these things, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they basically have, let us say, 3 or maybe 2 or 3, something like, but the standard is something like this: some dev environment, some staging, some production, staging or pre-production, whatever you want to call it, right? So when you're doing something like this on AWS, right, so some companies might have everything on AWS, some companies might have only the staging and production on AWS, some companies might have only the production on AWS, the other things might be on premises, right? It is possible. There is no rule that all have to be on AWS. It depends on what people are doing. If they already have infrastructure, they might keep the development on premises, staging and production on AWS. Some people, they might put everything on AWS. Now let us take an example of where everything is there on AWS. So how can you organize it? You can take one AWS account, you can create one dev environment, right, one staging, and one production environment, and you can control access to each of these things. Only the developers will be able to access this, the testing team will be able to access this, and then the IT infrastructure or your DevOps or a AWS admin, he can access all these three, because the developers, they usually don't work on the production. You don't give access to the production, right? So you can isolate like this. In one AWS account, you can create 3 environments. We'll see how to do that, and each person or each team can work on that appropriate environment. You can control the permissions. But now what some companies are doing is they are using different account for different environments. They are putting the dev over here, they are putting the staging over here, they are putting the production over here, because it is the same. The cost is going to be the same. Suppose say you are creating 3 servers, it is the same if you put all 3 over here, or it is the same if you put one up here. Whether you use 3 accounts to host 3 different servers or 1 account to host all 3 servers, the cost is the same, because the cost is per server, it is not per account, right? So cost wise, they don't spend anything extra, right? And then what they do is, I told you can create additional users. Now say there are A, B, C, D, 4 people. Say A is the admin, B is the developer, C is the testing guy, and D is some manager. Let us say, I'm just saying one person, but there will be a group of people, right? So now you can create A, B, C, D, right? If it is one AWS account, you have the 3 environments, right? You create A, B, C, D. Each person you give access to that environment, whatever it is, right? But now what some people are doing is they are keeping one AWS account only for creating users. They are creating the users here, right? They are creating the users in one AWS account, and then they are giving permission for that user to the other accounts. You can do that also, right? So when you create a user, it is not like he can access only that account. You can do cross account access also. That's called cross account access. We will see how to do that also, but I'm just showing you high level. So what people are doing is they are creating one account for each environment, right? And then the users, they are creating in account 4, AWS 4. In this account, they don't have anything else. They only manage users. Only for users they have this account. So same thing. Suppose A is what do you say, admin, or B is a dev. Then B gets permission only to this account, some services. So what they are doing, what are they achieving by doing something like this? They are minimizing the blast radius. All this is from architect point of view. In real time, in exam you don't get all this, but practically this is what you see, right? Minimizing the blast radius. What does it mean? If this account gets compromised, then only the dev environment is compromised, right? So in some big organizations, there will be a small support team or something like help desk or support team or something, AWS support team level 1 or something like that. Those people, they manage the users. They can't do anything else. They can't access account 1, 2 or 3. They can just give permissions for the other people to access whatever they need, right? So you can see that if the support team wants to manage the users, they come to account 4. They can't log into 1, 2 or 3. They can't do anything there. They will log into account 4 and they will manage the users. So you might be user C, right? So they will give you your email address and password and a link to login. So when you log in, depending on what permissions you have, you log into either one of the accounts or multiple accounts depending upon what role you have. This is also possible. A lot of people do this these days, right? They're having a separate account where they manage only the users. They don't have anything else. They don't have any server storage. This account is only for managing the users, right? So I have come across these type of things. Now it has become a little common, especially in big companies, right? Big enterprises where they have hundreds of users, right, across different locations. They manage it like that, right? But important thing is creating the users is free. There is no cost for users or accounts. You can create as many accounts as you want. Okay, all right. The next thing is we are going to talk about something called the regions and availability zones. The first technical thing that you need to know, right? So far what we have spoken is mostly administrative stuff and ID credentials related stuff, right? So what is regions and availability zones? So where is AWS? The question is that, because you have to understand this topic, very important, right? It comes frequently in the exam, especially when the architect, and for that matter any service you need to use, you need to understand this concept. What is region, what is availability zone, right? So the question is, where is AWS? We are saying it is cloud and all that stuff, right? Right, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, right, software as a service. You might have heard of all these terms, right? But where is AWS actually? Any idea?
Some physical location, they are making
Yes.
some data
Yeah.
centers.
So AWS is present in some physical location, right? So even though we say cloud and all that, there is some physical location, like you said, some physical data center, right? So when you are storing something, it is going and storing in AWS's data center, storage or server or whatever it is. So where is this physical location, or where is their data center? So it is not in one single place, right? So AWS is present across the globe, right? It is present across the world, and they categorize it as regions and availability zones. Actually three: you have regions and availability zones, and then you have something called endpoints, not endpoint, edge locations. Don't worry about edge locations for now. We'll talk about it in the coming classes, right? I keep saying this a lot because there is a lot of dependence on one service to another. If I explain it now, you will not understand. After we see a few services, things will fall into place, right? First thing we have to understand is region and availability zone. So AWS calls it regions and availability zones. How their locations are spread out across the world, it is categorized as regions and availability zones, right? The region is like a geographic location. Geographic location. You can just take the heading regions and availability zones, right? Right, I'll show you where to get the information, right? The region is like a geographic location. It can be a state, it can be a city, sometimes it can be a country also, depends, right? Availability zone is like a location inside the region. Remember this, availability zone is inside the region. I'll show you an example, right? Say for example, you guys are from Bangalore, right? Okay. I'm not very familiar with the areas in Bangalore. I'm just giving an example, right? I'm not saying AWS is there in Bangalore. Let us say Bangalore is the region, right? If AWS says they are in Bangalore, Bangalore will probably be the region. Inside Bangalore, they will have multiple availability zones. We represent it as AZ. right? In Bangalore, they might have two availability zones called AZ1, availability zone 2, right? So AZ1 might be near the airport, AZ2 might be in Electronic City, right? Something like this. So they will not be close to each other, right? These availability zones will be separated by some distance, because if something happens in this location, its impact should not be felt in this location, right? So what is AZ? It is the actual data center. So AWS, they don't give you the exact address or location of the data centers. They just give you information like this. In Bangalore, we have two availability zones. They don't give you the exact address of the availability zones or anything. Even the buildings, they will not have any, what you say, advertising that it is a AWS data center or something. It will not have all that thing. AWS officially, they don't provide any such information. They just say in Bangalore, we have two availability zones, right? In Mumbai, we have two availability zones, right? Something like that, right? So availability zone is like a location inside the region. It is actually a data center. It can be a single building, it can be two buildings, it can be three buildings, we don't know. It can be a group of data centers, right? We don't have that exact information. But AZ, availability zone, is like a data center or a group of data centers in that area, right? In that same street or couple of streets, right? In that area, right? Exact address we don't know. If you know somebody working in AWS, if they leak the information, fine. Otherwise, all this information is not publicly available, right? So the region is going to be a geographic location, right? In Bangalore as such, they don't have anything. What is there inside Bangalore? They have two availability zones, that is two groups of data centers which are separated far apart. They say, I think, on different floodplains or something, right? Because there are different things which can impact, right? Electricity outages, what do you say, bad weather, rains, floods, right? Internet connectivity, right? So if something is going to happen, it keeps happening all the time. It's not that AWS gives 100% availability, right? Or for example, their own infrastructure hardware might have some problem, right? So if something happens in AZ1, it should not impact AZ2. So they try to create their locations like this. You don't do anything. All this AWS builds and manages. So what are we going to use? We are going to use some region and some availability zones for our requirement, right? So if you say I'm going to use AWS, where are you going to use AWS, right? You can't just log into AWS and start using. You have to choose some location, right? If you are creating a server or storing your data, you have to say where you want to store. It's not automatic, because you can choose the region. So let me go ahead and open the documentation. You can just go to AWS regions and availability zones, or you can better, I think you can put global infrastructure, right? So here it is called a region, which is the physical location or geographic location in the world, right? Inside which they have groups of data centers, right? What is the availability zone? It is a group of data centers in that area, like Electronic City or airport, right? So each region usually will have at least two availability zones minimum, right? Each region consists of multiple isolated, physically separate availability zones within a geographic area. Like in Electronic City, they will have a availability zone. It might have two data centers, three data centers, we don't know. So one availability zone is not like one physical data center. It might be a group of buildings, or in some cases a single building. We are not bothered about it. For us, it will be shown as availability zone 1A, 1B, something like this. It will be shown. There are two separate availability zones in Bangalore, right? You get the idea. So if you want to know where they are located, right, AWS provides a map, right? Okay, so they are present across the world. Earlier they had a map, single map of the world map. showing the regions. Now they have just broken down the map into smaller continents, right? If you take the US, they have these locations, right? The blue dots, please don't worry, edge locations, they are used for different purpose. We'll talk about that. The orange circles are the regions. So where is AWS present? They are present across the world, right? Where are they present across the world? If you want to look in the US, they have what do you say, 3 plus 3, they have 6 regions in US. So it is not fixed, they keep adding. So you don't have to remember exactly how many are there, they keep adding, right? They keep adding new regions. So at present in US, they are available in these locations, these regions, the orange circles. That is US East, it is called, it is a state called Ohio, right? In US it is a state, right? Similarly, in US East they have another one, right? uh, where is that? US East, North Virginia, right? They have right, 2 in the East Coast, 2 in the West Coast, right? And one each called Go Cloud, one in the East, one in the West. What is Go Cloud? It is a separate region, right? Go Cloud is a separate region, right? So if you take, for example, in US, they have US East, right? In East they have 2, right? One is North Virginia, one is Ohio. Similarly, US West they have 2, right? Plus they have in East they have US Go Cloud.
So
Similarly,
is that meaning? Is that meaning only for? Is it for government purpose?
yes, yes,
Something kind of thing.
I'm going to explain.
Okay.
So these regions anybody can use. These regions anyone can use. Even you can use. These regions is only for US government agencies. You don't get access to these regions unless you work for a US government agency or for their project. But the services and all are same, right? The technology, services, everything, how you do is the same. But these are what do you say, different locations. These are isolated only for US government agencies, whether it is a bank or a what do you say, government bank, education department, criminal justice department, whatever. Because I have worked with 1 or 2, but it is a separate what is isolated region, right? So you cannot use this region. You can use any of the other regions. It does not matter if you are from India or from Australia. You can use the other regions except this. If you want access to these things, you have to request for permission, right? You can't do it unless you're a government agency. But technically, it is same. There is no technical difference. It is just a different location where only US government. So in India, so tomorrow they might have a location in India also for what do you say, for the India government agencies. Because if you see a lot of banks or the government application sites, they don't want to use the cloud because whatever, because of data security, some valid reasons, some invalid reasons, right? So tomorrow they might launch a region in India also for India government, right? So these are not like fixed. Tomorrow they might add another one. They usually don't remove, they keep expanding their infrastructure, right? So if you look in US, they have like this six regions, right? So each region, if you take, it will have multiple availability zones. So they started off in this US East, North Virginia. AWS started off here. Then they kept adding. Then 2009 they added US West California, right? And then they added Go Cloud. Then they added Oregon, and then they added US East Ohio, right? So they keep adding. It is not like everything came up one fine morning, right? It is continuously growing, right? So if you see each region, they will have minimum 2. Maximum they can add as many as they want. Earlier, this region, North Virginia, used to have 3. Then it became 4, 5. Now it is 6 because it is the most widely used. Where there are more customers, they are going to add more infrastructure. It is not like automatically the machines will come up or infrastructure will come up. They have to add. If more customers are using AWS, they need to add more infrastructure, right? So they will take care of that. Similarly, if you go to the South America, they have one thing in Brazil, right? So you can see where they have Sao Paulo. They have 3 availability zones over there, right? Don't worry about the blue dots. Blue dots are they are also AWS locations, but they are used for slightly different purposes, right? First, let us just worry about the regions and availability zones, which is the orange one, right? In Sao Paulo, they have AWS region with 3 availability zones. It was launched in 2011. Why they have only one region? Because maybe there are not many people who are using it in this region. If the demand is more, they might open another what do you say, a region inside South America. At present, they have one region with 3 availability zones. Okay, in South America. If you come to the Europe, Middle East, then they have similarly. In Europe, they have, right? If you take Frankfurt, what is Frankfurt? It's like a city. London is a city. It's not a state. In US, it might be a state, right? So I said it is like a geographic location. It depends. There is no fixed like, right? So Paris is a region. Inside Paris, they have 3 availability zones. They don't call it France or anything. It is Paris. It's a city, right? So inside Paris, they have 3 availability zones. Same thing. In London, they have 3 availability zones. In Ireland, they have 3, right? In Africa, they have, in Cape Town, they have 3. South Africa, which is very new, recent, right? So same thing in the Middle East is also relatively new, right? Earlier they were going to open a lot more data centers, but because of that killing last year or something, right? They killed some journalist or something, right? So he used to work for that Amazon paper or something. So because of that, something happened in the Middle East, in Dubai and all that stuff. So they have not opened more, right? So if you see in the Middle East, they have all the locations, right? So it's all the region plus inside the region some availability zones. What are we using? Technically, we use the availability zones, even though we say it as the region. The region is just the high level location. Technically, all our information is there inside a availability zone. Same thing if you come to India, that is, they call it Asia Pacific, right? Right, in Asia Pacific, it includes China, Australia, Japan, India, right? Singapore, right? So in India, they have in Mumbai 3 availability zones, which was launched in 2016, right? Hong Kong is like a country, it is like a state. They themselves don't know what it is, right? So there they have 3 availability zones, right? Singapore is a country, right? It's not a state or a city, it's a country in itself, right? So Singapore has 3 availability zones. So like that. But if you see this Osaka, it has 1 availability zone. So it is a special region, or they call it local region, right? You don't get access to this also because there is only 1 availability zone, and because of that there might be some limitations. If you want access to this, then you have to request for permission to use Osaka, right? If you look at the comment or whatever, right, Osaka is a local region. It is available only for the select customers who request access, right? By default it will not be available. We will talk about what why it is not default available. But if you see all other availability regions, they will have minimum 2 availability zones, and you will not get access to this Chinese region also, because they have their own internet law and all that stuff, right? If you are creating an account from outside China, you can't access that region, but you can access all others. You can access Sydney, you can access Tokyo, you can access Seoul, you can access US, you can access Hong Kong, everywhere, right? Only the US GovCloud, China, and what do you say, the Osaka region, you will probably not have access. So when you create your AWS account, which location are you creating? There is no location. Account is just account login. You can log in and you can choose whatever location you want, or you can choose multiple locations. You have access to all the locations. So after you log in, if you see in the top right corner, right here, drop down, you can use all these locations or any one location That is up to you, right? You have access to almost everything except those 3 exceptions: China, US Gov Cloud, and Osaka. Everything else is here. US, you have all the 4 regions: South Africa, Asia Pacific, Canada, Europe, Middle East, and South America. You can choose any one, or you can choose multiple. You don't need multiple accounts or anything. You just open this in a new tab. You are in US East. You open this, you are in Africa. It is the same console, same stuff, but in a different location, right? You don't have to physically travel anywhere or anything, right? So you can just open in a new tab and start using that location, right? Okay, so just give me a minute. Let me see if I can pull up some. Yeah, yeah. Let us see this, right? So here is a block diagram representation, right? So you have to understand this, which is very important. What is a region? What is a availability zone, right? So we understood what is the region, what is availability zone at a high level. So now you have to understand that the regions are like geographic locations. Availability zones are locations inside the region, which are separated a little apart inside the city or inside the state, something like that. I think it's around 20 to 30 kilometers apart, approximately, something like that. Depends on place to place, right? So what you have to remember is the availability zones, right? They are connected to each other. They are isolated, but they are connected through low latency links, like leased lines or something like that, right? So when you have something in ECIL and electronic city and airport, it is possible to physically connect them using a leased line, underground cable or something like that. But if you have something in the US and something in Europe, physically AWS cannot have their own leased line across the world, at least not yet, right? So right, so here what you have to remember is these availability zones are isolated from each other. They are in the same region, but they are connected using low latency links, right? High speed internet lines. So if you have a machine over here and a machine over here, they can still talk to each other over the private IP, technically speaking, right? They might be in two different data centers in the same region, but they can talk to each other over the private IP. And the speed between these two instances, data transfer or whatever, will be faster. And these, the regions, right, they are connected over the internet backbone. Okay, the regions, AWS regions, are interconnected over the internet backbone. Okay, you have to remember that, right? Because we will be using the regions and availability zone in and out. When you're architecting, what are you going to do? Which region are you going to choose and all that stuff you have to remember. So here is, this presentation is slightly older, right? Around 2 or 3 years old. But I hope you get the idea, right? Earlier it used to be like this. So there used to be a single map. It was easier to look at. Now they've just split it up into smaller continents and they're showing it, right? But you get the idea, right? They're present across the world, right? So they keep adding the regions and availability zones. Okay. So we'll take a small break, guys, or do you want to continue?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a 15 minutes break. Okay.
Sure.
I'll catch you guys after 15 minutes from now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we are talking about the regions and availability zones. right? The regions and availability zones. So we saw what are the regions available, right, and what are actually availability zones. So the next question is going to be, which region are you going to use, right? So which region are you going to use? Any idea? How do you choose the region? Because you have access to all these regions. You once you create an account, you can use any one or multiple regions. That is up to you. So how do you know, or how do you choose the region that you are going to use?
So can it be close to a proximity?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So there are different factors. Like when you said close, right? So what are we going to use AWS for? To host some application or data, right? So which region are you going to choose to do that? So there are different factors. Like say for example, close to where your the end users are. Now let us say for example, Flipkart, right, or say HDFC, right? Say for example something like this. So if you want to host something for Flipkart, for HDFC, which region will you choose, right? So first is how far is it from your the end users, right? Like you said, proximity. Proximity to what? To your end users, not to where you are located. You can work from US also, but where is your customer base maximum located? If you take HDFC or Flipkart, it's going to be from India, right? So maybe you can choose a location which is in India or close to India, right? So India means what? Technically, it's Mumbai, right? Or maybe you can put it in Singapore, right? It is closer to India. Why you want to do something like this? Because the latency will be lower, right? If somebody tries to open the application or something, it will be faster. You can host the same thing in US also, but if people from India have to access, then the data has to come from US, right? There will be a few milliseconds of latency, right? So one thing is that then you can choose based on what do you say, some security requirement or compliance. Suppose it's HDFC Bank, then they might have a law, a banking law or RBI law which says the customer data has to be in US, sorry, in India. Then you have no other option. You have to choose India only. You have to choose Mumbai. You cannot choose US. Even though speed is not your priority, latency is not your priority, right? But there is a law or a compliance which states that the customer data has to be stored in India or the application has to be hosted in India. Then what happens? Then you have to choose the India location. You can't choose Singapore. It's not where you are located, it is where your customers are located or what the law says, right? Because AWS we can access from anywhere. You can be traveling, you can access from across the world. But where is the infrastructure going to be hosted? Where are the servers and where are the storage going to be located? Which region? It depends on these things. Next thing might be cost. For you, the speed is not important, right? Security compliance also no problem, but for you, cost is very important, right? So AWS is available across the regions. Let us just categorize it as US, Europe, right? Singapore, India, Australia, right? Let us just take it like this, right? The cost is not same across all the regions. There will be a small variation. It is not like two times or three times the cost. Usually the cost will be within plus or minus 20% for most of the services. It will not exceed that. Some services might be slightly higher depending upon the location where you use it, right? Singapore is usually the most expensive, followed by Japan, I think. US is usually the cheapest. In US again you have US East, US West, right? So the prices will slightly vary, but US is generally the cheapest. For you, cost is very important. Then you use a region from US, something like US East, North Virginia, which is the most widely used, highly used region. Used to be still is, because the cost here is cheaper compared to any other location within the US or even across the different regions, right? Suppose you want to use in the US. Okay, now how to optimize for cost? It is not one single factor, there might be a combination of these things, right? Of course everybody wants to optimize for cost. If cost is your only thing, then you can go for this. Suppose you need compliance and cost, then accordingly you have to choose. Okay, now I'm working for a US bank, they are saying my data has to be in US. Okay, so in US you have 4 regions, right? In US East you have 2, in US West you have 2. So which 4 out of the 4 which you will use? Whichever is cheaper, probably, right? Another factor is service availability. It might sound stupid, but it is true. What is service availability? So AWS has many services, right? It has, say for example, servers, storage, databases, right? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these services. Now say you are hosting an application for Flipkart or something, and you need to use artificial intelligence and machine learning services, right? So when you log into AWS, right, you choose any region. Right now I'm in the US East, North Virginia. You go to the services, you will see all the services that AWS offers. Same thing, you go to Mumbai, right? Okay, now I'm in Mumbai. The console looks the same. There is no difference. You go to services, you will see all the services. All right. Now say I want to use some artificial intelligence or machine learning service. Let us go there and let us click on something from that category, right? So here you have machine learning, artificial intelligence, something. Let us click on this deep lens. I'm in US now, right? So deep lens is a service, some service. Don't worry about the technical aspect, right? So I'm in US. I open deep lens. Now I'm in Mumbai. So let us go down and let us open deep lens. So now you see you got error. What is it saying? Region unsupported. Okay, so this service is available only in these 3 locations. Even in the US, it is not available everywhere. It is available only in US East, North Virginia. So if you want to use this service, then obviously you cannot use any other region apart from these 3. Right? So you should not assume that simply because it is showing over here all services are available in all locations. It is not true. It will appear here. Right? Under the services list, you go to any location, it will show all the services. But a lot of services, especially new services, uncommon services like machine learning, that's not what everybody uses, right? So they may not be available in all locations. How do you know that? You have to check. You cannot remember everything. So prior to you actually using or starting to create anything, you have to have your requirement. Like if you're implementing some project, like I said, you will know how many servers you need, what services you need to use, what storage you need to use. So you have to identify whether those services are all available in the region that you choose, right? So currently this service which I chose is not available in Asia Pacific. It might be available after a few months or maybe a year later. We don't know when it will be available as such. It is not that it will never be available. At present, it is not available. Okay, so you have to combine all these factors. There might be some other factors also, but these are the common factors that you have to keep in mind. So when you are going to implement a project on AWS, which region? Either they have already informed you what region to choose, or they're asking you to choose some region. Right? So based on these factors, you are going to choose. First, you are going to check. First, usually people check the security, then only everything. Because if security is not compliant, then no point of the other things, right? So first thing people are going to look at is security. Are there any compliance problems or issues or anything that I have to follow, right? And then they are going to usually look at priority. I mean the latency or the cost, right? But even before that, first you look at security, second you look at service availability, then only you go to other things, right? and then you optimize for both these things. Because if the service itself is not there, there is no point. Because I have come across this, we assume that the service will be available. This happened to me itself, right? Because I was working in a GovCloud project, right? What is GovCloud? It's a separate region for US government agencies. I think late 2017 I was working in some government client project, right? So they were, what do you say, they had some existing on-premise applications. They were migrating it to the cloud. They wanted to use US GovCloud US East, right? Earlier there was only one GovCloud location. Later on they added the other one on the US West, right? So all that is not the matter. So it was a pretty straightforward implementation. The common services. It was not even any special services or something like that. Just the usual stuff with the networking and what do you say, servers and storage, right? So okay, they said US GovCloud. Obviously, it's the client's account, right? So we, what do you say, we practice or we test in our account. Our account means my company account or my personal account, because it is the same whether you do it in your account or their account. It is the same thing. So you want to practice some, what do you say, how to do it, or some infrastructure as code, right? We were doing it using infrastructure as code. That is, we create a what do you say, configuration file to create the infrastructure. We are not going to manually sit and do one by one, right? So we identified what all we want, what is the network layout, how many servers, all that. So while trying to create it, it was working in my account, that is in my office account, which I was using US East or something. Everything was working fine. So we took and we tried to implement here. It was giving error. It was not getting created. Then we realized that one particular service called the NAT gateway, it is not available in GovCloud. It's a thing which everybody uses almost, but it was not available in GovCloud. But then what happened? We had to modify the networking layer a little bit to to put an alternate thing. We cannot go out of the region because they want to use GovCloud only. So we have to find some alternate thing for that. There is an alternate thing for that. We did that, but we assume that the NAT gateway will be available because it's a pretty common service which is pretty much available everywhere. Because nobody had worked in the GovCloud earlier, they didn't know that. We just assumed that it will be there because it's not even a service that you can see outside. It is a feature of a particular service. It's not just the service inside the networking. It is one component. It's not even a service. It is just one component inside the networking service. So that was not there. So we had to use an alternate for that. But we could not go out of the region. I could go out, I could create in another region, but it is not possible, right? So you have to always check whether the services that you are going to use, whether they are available or no, especially if you are starting off with AWS or you are using any new region which you have not used, right? Like I said, nobody is going to use all the regions, right? One single client is not going to use all the regions. Maximum people use 2 regions, mostly. Maximum. Mostly people, lot of people use one region and multiple availability zones, right? They use one region and each region has multiple availability zones, right? So you have to make use of that you have to remember, right? All this infrastructure is provided. It does not mean it fails over automatically, right? All these the regions, right? We saw US East, right? US East one, let us say for example US East 2, right? Mumbai. All these things are the regions, right? Each region has 2 availability zones, right? Minimum. I'm just drawing 2 for now, right? So when you are using a service, a lot of services, suppose you are creating a virtual machine, you will be creating it in a particular availability zone, right? Your virtual machine is not going to sit in multiple availability zones. That does not happen. Okay, if you create one server, it is there in that availability zone, that data center. It cannot be in 2 places at the same time. If you want high availability, you have to create another server in the second availability zone, so that even if this server goes down, this server is up and running. Even if this entire availability zone goes down, still you have another machine in another availability zone. You can create two machines in the same availability zone. Then one machine goes down, the other machine is there. But if the entire availability zone has a problem, then your entire, what do you say, the cluster or whatever is down. So all that we are going to see in architect. While architecting, the best practice is use minimum 2 availability zones for your solution. You can choose one region, but use the multiple availability zones, because all these are always live. There is no cold data center. It is not like availability zone 2 will come up only when availability zone 1 is down. No, all the data centers in Amazon are always live or hot. There is no cold data center, right? So you can use anything anytime. That is in your control. They are providing this. What we have to learn as architect is to use these things, right? You should not, all this is not automatic, right? Right, for the end user it might be automatic. For him, he might get 100% uptime. But how is he getting 100% uptime? Because at the back end, your infrastructure is architected so that even if one location fails, one location means one availability zone fails, you have your servers or infrastructure in the second availability zone also, so that even if one availability zone fails, your application is still up and running. End of the day, that's what your customer or clients want. That is, their application should be working most of the time. Nobody can guarantee 100% uptime, but how do you reach that 99.9 or 99.99%? By using like this. If you put everything in one availability zone, then if that availability zone itself has a problem, then everything will be down. It does not matter if it is one server or 100 servers. If you put everything in one box, if that box has a problem, then your entire application is down, right? So you should try to use these availability zones which they have provided. Like I said, if you want to create say some Apache or Tomcat, right? You want to install Apache, right? And you want to host your application, so you can use one single server. Sorry, you can put it on a single server. Or say you get a lot of traffic, you want high availability, you create two machines, right, in the same availability zone, and you put them behind a load balancer, something like this. You put them behind a load balancer. So as the traffic comes, it will go to, the traffic will be equally distributed amongst your machines. So it will work, right? The speed and everything will be good. So if this machine has a problem, still your application will be online because you have another machine which will handle the traffic. But it might slightly slow down. Or you can replace the machine also, no problem. But what if this location, this availability zone 1 itself is having some problem, right? Some problem means it might be some internet connectivity problem, some power problem. Frequently it happens. So when that happens, what happens? Both your machines will be having problems. It's not because something you did wrong, some problem at AWS end. So no point even if you have 2 or 3 machines when that entire availability zone is having a problem, right? So what you have to do is the same thing you can implement, same 2 machines, the cost will be the same. So how can you improve availability? You can put one machine in availability zone 1, one machine in availability zone 2. The cost is the same, but your availability improves, right? If entire US East 1 goes down, then you can't do anything. Then you have to use 2 regions. If that is more important to you, if you want even higher availability, then you choose multiple regions because everything is available for you. All are hot, all are always live. So it depends on how much availability you want to achieve and how much cost you want to save. Because if you start using more regions, more machines, obviously you have to pay more, right? The minimum is always use multiple availability zones. So remember this, right? Architecting, this is the first principle. Always use multiple available. Whether you use multiple regions, that is next level. So choose one region and always use multiple availability zones when you are giving your architect solution or plan. So don't try to over optimize for cost by just using one single machine in one availability zone or two machines in one availability zone, it will work. But when something breaks, everything will break. So you should try to
So
spread
here,
your infrastructure. Yeah.
yeah. So yes, Siddharth. So when it comes to this point, so you say that as a best practice, we need to configure minimum two availability zones. Okay. So
Yes.
here the data will be replicated, shadowing for one availability zone and other one.
No, you have to do all that. All that is what we have to do, right? How you do that,
Okay.
that depends upon what type of application you have, because it depends on service to service. Like I said, for some services
Mm-hmm.
there is automated option, for some services you don't have to do, for some services you have to do. So that we will see service to service, but the high level idea is this. So there is no like
Okay.
straightforward thing. So for most of the services you can use multiple availability zones. For some services you don't use them, but every service is present in some availability zone. Okay, so when you are planning for something, you have to keep this in mind. Wherever possible, use multiple availability zones. In some cases the data is automatically replicated, in some cases you have to have some method to do that. Okay, so important thing to remember is all these are always live hard. There is no cold data center. You can make one cold, right? For example, if you want to use two regions, you can host your copy of the same application in the second region, and you can say only if region 1 goes down I will switch to region 2. For you it is cold, right? But for AWS it is always there, right? Your servers are always on running. You have to pay for it. You will switch over to 2 when one fails. That is the backup, what do you say, location or failover location for you. But as far as AWS is concerned, all the regions and availability zones are always live and hot. Okay, so you can keep a copy of your infrastructure in the second region, right, in sync with the first region, or you can keep it off. You can switch it on whenever region 1 goes down. That is up to you, right? That is at the region level. But usually what people do, they choose a region and they use multiple availability zones, right? So it depends, like if you are working with 3 or 4 clients, or the client has different what do you say, applications or servers, each of it might be in a different region, right? It does not matter, right? So it is not like one client or one application. I'm talking about most common stuff, right? Some people use multiple regions also, especially big enterprises where they need very high availability. But a lot of people, they use a region and the multiple availability zones present inside that region. Okay, so when you're architecting, always use multiple availability zone. Then if they say the cost is too much, then you can what do you say, minimize that. Suppose you're giving an architecture with 4 servers, right? You can put all the 4 in one availability zone, or you can put one in each availability zone. Or if you're using Mumbai, there are only 2 availability zone, you can put 2 in one, 2 in another one. Now if they say the cost is too much, we want only 2 machines, then you can remove 2 machines, right? You can remove one machine from each availability zone. Still your cost, you're bringing the cost down, because they said the cost is too much. For 4 machines, we will keep only 2 machines, then keep one in each availability zone. Then they say no, 2 also too much. Then you have to say, if you keep only one machine, you have so and so problem. It is not compulsory, problem will happen. If it happens, more possibility of your application going down, right? So we should not start off with providing one server or using one availability zone, right? So our proposal should be what do you say, to some standard that AWS recommends, are what do you say, common sense. Then if they want to minimize the cost, they want to remove, then they have to say that. Then you have to inform them and do it, because tomorrow if it goes down, they will blame you only. Why only one server is there, something like that, right? So it is our responsibility as an architect to use the provided regions and availability zones. That is totally in our control, right? You can use as many or as few as you want, but the best practice is always use multiple availability zones, right? So the next thing is, if you look at the availability zones, next to that it will say US East 1, US East 2. All that is how we usually refer to it. It is called the programmatic what do you say, name or reference, because you can do all this using what do you say, configuration files or infrastructure as code. There you can't say create a server in North Virginia. There you will say something like AWS EC2 create instance in US East 1. So what is US East 1? It is representing this North Virginia. It is the same. If people say US East 1, they mean US East North Virginia, right? So we keep using this in real time, right? I mean this terminology, that's all, right? So if they say US West 1, it means North California. How you will remember this? Either by practice or you sit and learn this. But in the exam, they don't ask you US East is what, right? US East Ohio is what, right? But you will see uh, what you say in your architecture diagram or whatever, they use this. They will not, they usually don't say US East Ohio, they will say US East 2. There is only one US East 2, that is US East Ohio. Same thing, if it is Mumbai, it will be AP hyphen something, AP hyphen South 1. That means they are referring to Asia Pacific Mumbai. AP hyphen East 1 means Asia Pacific Hong Kong, right? So all this is the programmatic name for the region. Once you go into the region, the availability zones will be labeled US East 1 ABCDEF, right? It has 6. Now if you go to US East 2, it will be what? It will be US East 2 ABCD, something like that, right? If you go to AP South, sorry, right? Suppose if I go to Mumbai, that's the naming convention they follow, right? The region is called US East 2. The availability zones will be called US East 2A, 2B, 2C. They have 3, I think, over here, right? Tomorrow, if they add the 4th, it will be called 2D, US East 2D. If you go to Mumbai, it is AP hyphen South 1. So it will be AP hyphen South 1A, 1B, 1C. These are the 3 availability zones, something like this, right? So we follow this. I mean, AWS follows this convention for naming, right? You should not say availability zone 1 or 2. It is either 1A, 1B, 1C or 2A, 2B, 2C, depending upon the region that you choose, right? So we'll take we'll take the example of US East. So which region are you going to use? Now you're practicing, right? So which region to use? So use US East North Virginia. It is usually the cheapest and it also has most of the services. For us, speed and all is not important. Speed security is not important. We just want to learn and practice. So use US East, right? For practicing, after you log into AWS, make sure you choose US East from the drop down, because sometimes when you log out and log in, it might default to US East Ohio or sometimes India also. So be careful that every time you choose this location, because after you choose this location, you will log out, you will clean up, you will log out, you will log in. It might default to a different location and you will not see what you created, and you will say, I'm not able to see my infrastructure. It's probably because you are in the wrong location. So stick to one region, right? Stick to US East, North Virginia for practicing. Fine. Okay. So now in this location, we have 6 availability zones, right? We have 1A, 1B, it's usually small letters, okay, 1C, 1D, 1E, 1F, right? In US East. If you look down over here, you have these 6 availability zones: US East 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1F. Okay. So here, AWS account anybody can use. Say I have an AWS account, you have an AWS account. So even if you log in, you will see the same thing, 6 availability zones, right? So what is an availability zone? It is like a group of data centers inside that region, right? A is one location in North Virginia, B is one location, C is one location, D, E, F. So they are mapped differently for different people, right? What does this mean, right? So there are 6 availability zones for everybody, but they are not what you say, what you see outside 1A it is not the same for everybody, right? Here I am there, here you are there. Both of us will see the same thing, 1A to 1F. But my 1A might be different from your 1A. What does that mean? Suppose say 1A is in, what do you say, electronic city, right? So 1B is airport, right? It is not mapped like this. It is not fixed, right? It is not 1A is electronic city, 1B is airport. It is not like that, right? For me, 1A might be electronic city. For you, 1B might be electronic city. It is mapped differently for different users. Okay, do you get that? We have access to all the 6 locations. Okay, but for me, 1A might point to electronic city. For you, 1B might point to electronic city.
Okay.
For me, 1C might point to what do you say, airport. For you, also 1C might point to airport. So it is mapped differently. Sometimes there will be overlap that AWS takes care. Because say for example, now if I come and say create a server in 1A, it is the first option I see, I will say 1A. You will also say 1A. Everybody will say 1A. Then what will happen if it is statically mapped? Then all the data will be here. All these will be unused, right? To avoid that, they map it differently for different users in the backend. There are 6 physical locations, let us say, but the mapping is different for different people. Your 1A and my 1A are not, will not always be the same. They may be the same, but there is no guarantee, right? Some might overlap between 2 users, because you have to understand this, because if you are seeing a problem in 1A user, the other user might not see a problem in 1A, because for him 1A is something else, right? Some other location, right? So it is mapped differently for different users. Now they have added the what do you say, the actual location, so you can see that in the new EC2 dashboard. I mean the old dashboard. So they keep updating this GUI. It's very irritating for people who are regularly working, right? But they keep updating this GUI. In the new GUI, they are showing that mapping, right? Here you see it says US East 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1F. But if you look at this mapping, here what you see in the bracket is the actual data center's code or something, the availability zones code or something. Here you see my US East 1A is actually there, US East 1 AZ1, fine. B is US East 1 AZ2, but 1C is US East 1 AZ4. So for you and me, if you compare, if you take 2 different accounts, this mapping will be different. We will see the same A to F, but the values in the bracket will be different. It might be different, there might be some overlap. So if you see, for me it is 1 2 4 6 3 5, right? It is not 1 2 3 4 5 6. It is not going to be like this. The actual data center availability zone code or something is what is in the bracket. So if you are having a problem in 1A, like I said, companies have multiple AWS accounts, right? So those accounts also, the mapping will be different. So this thing in the bracket will be different for different accounts. There might be some overlap. So if you are noticing a problem in one account in 1A, in the other account also you should not expect problem in 1A. In the other account, the problem might be in 1B, right? So it does not mean that AWS is having problem in 2 availability zones. It is having a problem in 1 availability zone, but because it is mapped differently for different accounts, you are noticing a problem in both. Understood?
Yeah, understood.
Okay, so you have to be careful with that. So if you are seeing in one AWS account problem in 1A, in this other account you may not see problem in 1A. 1A might be working fine because it is mapped differently. So it does not mean 1A is down. So whenever AWS gives an update or something, they will say we are having a problem in single AZ. They usually don't specify which AZ. They will say we are experiencing a problem in a single availability zone, because they cannot say we are experiencing problem in 1A, because 1A is just dynamic mapping. The actual code is in the bracket. So but still I think they only say we are experiencing a problem in single AZ. So if you are working in that AZ, you will see a problem. If you are not working in that AZ, you will not see a problem. Two customers might be working in one A. For one person, there will be a problem. For the other person, it will work fine because they are mapped differently. Okay. So you have to remember that, right? The availability zones mapping is different. Outside, you will just see this. Now they have started putting this thing in the bracket. Earlier, it was not there, right? In the new console, they are showing you this so that you can easily understand, right? But everybody has access to all 6. Okay. So remember, it is our responsibility to use multiple AZs depending upon the service that we are going to choose. So don't worry about this console. Sometimes you will see the new console, sometime old console. You can use either console, right? So I'm what do you say, comfortable with the slightly older one because they keep what do you say, updating this GUI. Of late, they have been doing it very frequently, so it gets irritating. The options keep moving here and there, right? So that is up to you. You can use either GUI, right? Either layout. It is just a thing, right? The services are the same, right? So that is about the regions and availability zones for now. The next thing is, after you log into the console, what do you get, right? You get this console, obviously. This is the GUI. So we will just see simple what are the options over here in the console itself, right? So after you log in, so obviously here you have the services, right? So what service you want to use, you choose from here, right? You want to create a virtual machine, storage, whatever, you choose from the services drop down, right? Don't worry about the resource groups for now. We'll talk about this later. And then you have this pin icon, right? So what is this? Some frequently used services. You can drag and drop it to the menu bar, right? Suppose you use what do you say, Alexa for business frequently, then you can just drag it and drop it over here, simply like a shortcut, instead of every time going to services and choosing Alexa. If it is something you are regularly using, you can just put it as a shortcut over here, right? That's what the toolbar or menu bar is for, right? If you don't want, you can drag and drop it back down. It's just like a shortcut thing for you to make your work easier. And then of course you have this bell icon. This is important. So this is called the personal health dashboard, all right? PHD, just remember it like that, right? So what is that? So if there are any outages or any problems or any issues or any notifications that AWS wants to send, you will see it over here, right? You can click on open issues. Open issues means if AWS is having any issues, it's not what do you say, because of you. These are something that is happening at AWS. They keep updating you. We cannot simulate this, right? If there are some issues, it will appear here, right? If you want to see some past issues or something, you can put this. So you see, almost every other day they will have some problem or the other. Is it going to affect you? It depends. Depends on what? Whether you are using that particular service, whether you are using it in that region, right? If you are not using RDS in US West 2, this is not going to impact you. This is going to impact the people who are using RDS in US West 2 and a particular option. So you will get that notification over here. You will see an orange dot or something if there is any ongoing issue. That is at AWS end. So here you see earlier, a day before yesterday or something, 4 days ago, there was some problem with this service called RDS, database service. So they will update that information over here. What is happening, right? So we are investigating some connectivity issues affecting some instances in a single availability zone. Earlier they used to say single availability zone. Now they are putting that code in the bracket, right? So that it is easier for you to know which of your availability zone is affected. Earlier, if you see the old console, it used to be like this. They used to say single AZ. So you will not really know which it is, right? So now they are specifying that which availability zone. They will say single. They will not say 1A or 1B. They will say what is in the bracket, because this 1A 1B mapping is different. Okay. So if you are using RDS in this region, in this availability zone, then you are having problem. You may have problem. If you are using AZ1, then probably you will not have problem, right? So some connectivity issue, right? So they are confirming that we have connectivity issue. It's affecting some instances in a single availability zone. We have restored the connectivity. So they keep
So Sid,
updating this.
do we get a mail alert? So do we get a mail pop-up also?
You can
Like
configure
say
those
for
things.
example,
Those
if
additional things you have to configure, right? By
okay.
default, they provide these things. So if your server is not responding, or what do you say, all that ping and all that connectivity, all that monitoring stuff, you have to do. That's what we are going to learn, right? So these things you can get a alert, right? You can configure an alert to get from AWS, right? But your specific infrastructure, because we don't know, right, how each person is going to configure their infrastructure, whether it is affected. So they are not saying it affects all the machines, right? Some machines are having problem. They cannot say which machines, right? Some instances are having problem. So that instance level you have to monitor. Availability zone level, they will say some problem is going on. So in that availability zone, you might have different stuff, right? So they keep updating that information. We have restored connectivity, right? And sometimes they provide additional information. Sometimes they don't. They actually, what do you say? Don't give the low level actually what happened. Something like they will say, we have fixed the issue. Do your work. It's none of your business what happened in the backend. Something like that they will say, right? So they will say, because at 2 p.m. we experienced power and the network connectivity issues. You cannot do anything about this. This is the data center problem. That's why we have to use multiple AZs. So if somebody had their database only in AZ2, then it would have probably been down. If they had a multi-AZ deployment, it would have, what do you say, uh, prevented this problem, right? Right? So that's what they say, right? For people who had this multi-AZ deployment, it failed over to the other availability zone as expected, and only people with single AZ database, they remained affected, right? So they will not, what do you say, they don't guarantee 100% SLA, right? So if you want the highest availability, you have to use multiple availability zones. Sometimes the cost might be higher, but you want availability, right? So they are saying it has been restored and majority of the machines are up. We are still continuing to recover the remaining instances, right? So they will keep updating it until thing. If they are not able to fix or something, they will tell you what to do, right? See, a small number of remaining database instances are hosted on hardware which was adversely affected by loss of power, right? So they will give you, if it impacts you, you will see it in your personal health dashboard, right? So you will also see that over here. You can go to dashboard, right? Open issues. So it will show here if it is affecting any of your machines or something. You will see over here what to do, and then you have scheduled changes. Scheduled changes means if they are doing some maintenance, some planned maintenance or something like that, then you will see that over here. They will tell you uh, the next week, some date, say on September 6th or something. Okay, we are going to do some maintenance. On September 6th, we are going to do some maintenance. It might affect your instance. Your instance means your virtual machine, let us say. It will affect your virtual machine. They will give you the ID, the virtual machine ID. They will say we are doing maintenance from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. for 1 hour. During this period, your virtual machine with this ID might experience connectivity issues. Uh, to avoid the connectivity issues, they will give you some steps to follow. Or you can choose to ignore it. Between this time, you might have connectivity problems. After that, it will be restored. So all that they publish. I cannot show you that. That AWS has to put over here, right? So those are scheduled, means some planned maintenance they are doing, right? Same thing. Scheduled changes, it will take you to the same thing, right? Open issues means some ongoing issues at AWS, right? Scheduled changes means some scheduled maintenance. It might be for a particular service or some maintenance or some update or upgrade or something. You may or may not have to take action. That will be shown over here. Other notification means in general, some updates, new, what do you say, some change in feature, right? Those type of things, right? So here if you see security notification. So what is this? It is regarding some TLS, what do you say, certificate, SSL certificates, right? The protocol which you are going to use, right? So they are saying they are going to stop supporting TLS 1.2, right? TLS 1 and 1.1 or something, they are going to stop, right? So they are going to remove TLS 1.0 and 1.1 support for these things. So if you are using TLS 1.0 and 1.1 and this particular service, then you might what do you say, have connectivity issues. So you have to go and what do you say, uh, change its configuration or whatever. They will tell you how to do it, what to do, right? So these are going to be changes to certain services or certain features being deprecated or updated or those type of things, right? So you have to keep an eye on this. So usually you will see a dot over here, usually a blue dot next to the bell or a orange dot. If you see anything, it means there is some notification that you want to see. So these type of notifications, right, you get a mail also, right? If you look at this, it's about SMS. There is a what do you say, service in AWS for which you can, from which you can send SMS. So for the people using in India, they have some update. What is that update? It's not because of AWS, because TRI has put some new regulations or requirements for sending messages, right? So you have to create your alphanumeric ID. So for example, if you get a message from HDFC Bank, you will see something like ID HDFC or IM-HDFC or something, right? Those are the sender IDs, right? They register with TRI those IDs so that it can be tracked. Some people, they send spam without anything. From some random numbers you get some messages, right? Some offers and something. Those are, what do you say, technically illegal, right? So now AWS requires that if you have if you are doing it from their platform, you need a sender ID, right? So those type of things, earlier it was not required, now it has become like compulsory, right? So those type of changes depends on if you're using this service, you follow their instruction. If you're not using the services, ignore. Because I'm using these services, I'm getting the notifications, right? So you can see affected resources. If there are any affected resources, it will show, right? It's just showing my account ID, because this particular thing, it needs to be account wide or something like that, right? So you get that information over here, right? You have open issues, which are ongoing issues at AWS, and scheduled maintenance changes, those type of things, and other general notifications with respect to services, right? To see this dashboard, you have to log into AWS. So without logging into AWS also, you can get a high level overview of what is happening, what is the status, right? You can just say AWS status dashboard, health dashboard or whatever, right? Service health dashboard. So a lot of services have this. Without logging into AWS, you can check this. It is just a high level. So it will show you all the regions, all the services, what is their status. This page anybody can open from anywhere without logging into AWS, right? If you see in the US East, right? Sorry, in North America, all these services are there, right? All the regions, whether it's operating normally or no. You will see usually a green, what do you say, yellow or a red mark. Usually they will never put the red mark, right? So here you see South America, Europe. So you can check just high level. So a lot of services have, Gmail also has, right? You can say Gmail dashboard. It will show you Gmail health dashboard or something. So like that, almost every service these days has, right? Status dashboard, right? Whether Gmail is working, Google Calendar, all their services are working, right? So like this, almost pretty much every service provider has this high level dashboard, right? You can also check Google Cloud dashboard, right? Status dashboard. So you can see all this is for the Google Cloud, whether their services are having any problem. Just a quick high level. Now you see here there's a yellow thing, right? So some problem was there, right? Command center, some security related stuff, right? So they update like this. AWS updates like that, right? It is the same thing, same concept, right? Everybody has this. Service health dashboard is just a high level stuff, right? So if you scroll down, you can see a lot of them will be in green, but you will see some orange and red here and there. It means that particular service. So here you see, if it is all green, it is okay. If it is yellow, it is service degradation. If it is red, service disruption. Mostly it will be green or yellow. If it goes to service disruption, that means there is some major problem. Informational message means it is just FIY. It's not really affecting anything. More like informational, right? So you can see it from outside, or you can log in and see, right? It will show you for the past week or something like that, few days, right? You can go and check the health, right? If there is anything, you can click on it. It will show you that informational message, right? You can just scroll through this page and see. Here you see there is something blue. You see that thing what you saw in the personal health dashboard, something similar you are going to see here. Just the updates quickly without logging in, right? If you're using this particular location, right, that particular service on that particular date, then probably you have been affected, or right, on July 29th it happened, right? Just like that. So it is not like what do you say, 100% live or something. It will take some time for them to update this. Now if you are noticing a problem, they will acknowledge, okay, we have a problem, then this dashboard will be updated after a few minutes. It's not like immediately something goes down, immediately the status will change. It is not so fast, because they want to avoid saying something is down. They will try to hide it wantedly. Slowly they will say, yeah, we are having a problem, we are checking, right? So we have to also be proactive in monitoring. Okay, so that is called the service health dashboard. What you see here in the bell is the personal health dashboard, right? It is specific to your account, something like that. Okay, personal health dashboard. But okay, and then you have your account information, all that stuff. All this is pretty self-explanatory, right? You can go into your billing dashboard, you can see your billing related information, right? I'll show you this in the coming classes as we use the services, but feel free to just go click inside and explore what is there. It's not going to cost you any money, right? You just go into the billing dashboard, see how it is. Maybe let me just open the billing dashboard. Yeah, I have to show you this also, right? So in your billing dashboard, you will be able to see, right, a rough estimate of this month's bill. It is not like up to date live. Now 2.88 is the current month to date. That is till October 29th. It is saying my bill is 2.88, right? The estimate is 3.4, right? 2.88 is not up to now. It's not up to this particular minute. It is still, say, last night. Now if I use something immediately, this bill will not increase live. It will increase after a few hours, right? You get the point? So if you just use something, don't expect your bill to immediately show you that value. Check after 6 hours or something. That value would have been updated. Okay? Usually it is within 12 hours. Right? Now if I use something in the evening, if I check that that value would have been added. Okay? So you can check your billing related stuff here. So which service is using how much out of this 2.88? They are just showing. All this is there already configured. You don't have to create anything as such. All this is already there. This I have not done any additional configuration. You get all this information out of the box. So you can see, suppose your bill has come $3. Why it came $3? Which service is using more? Then you can go and clean up that service. Maybe while practicing you forgot to do something, you can see. So if you are in the free tier, right, you will see this also. So here I have only a few services, right? You will see a lot more information because my account is over a year old. So I see a little fewer information. Your account, you will see more. It will show you how much you have used out of your limit in free tier, right? For other services, because for me other services are not there in free tier. Only the the few services which are for lifetime free tier, I have those, so it is showing me, right? So CloudWatch I have used 0.01% of my free tier. So you can see some additional information in your account over here, your free tier usage, right? And then if you want to check your bills, you can go to bills and you can see your bill for this month. It is August 2020, right? Still the month is not over, but like I told you, the bill is updated like once or two times a day. It's not like instantly you use something, the value comes, right? If you want to check your old bills, you can check. So if I go some very old, when I created this account 2014, right? If I go to October, I can still see my old bills. So here you see $493, right? Right. So which service used what, all that stuff, you have that information, right? You can check your bills, right? We will see the other things, how to use the cost explorer, all those things. But just now for high level, you can just play around with these options, right? It's all free of cost. You can just explore the bills. So you can have billing preferences. You can go, you can get an email of your bill, right? Every time a bill is generated, right? Those things we will see, right? The payment method, if you want to edit your card information, you can go to payment methods and update your card information in case your card is expired or something. You can go ahead and update the payment methods, right? And then you have something called consolidated billing. All that we will see as we go through the classes, right? You can create this cost and usage reports, right, to see which services you are using and all those things, right? You can get a report based on the services you are using. All these things are, right? You can just click on these and just check what they are, but a few of these things we will cover, right? All this is mostly administrative, those type of things, right? But they have all these options, right? You can just see, right? You can see May, how much you use, June, July, all these things. Just whatever data is there, it is reported in whatever format you want, right? So all that is those things, right? Okay. And then here, of course, you choose the region. For billing, you don't have to choose the region. Billing is everything combined. Okay. For billing, you don't choose the North Virginia region or something. Billing is for your entire account. Whatever the regions you use, it will be shown in your single bill. If you're using multiple, what do you say, locations, right? It will be shown in your bill itself, right? Suppose if I go to EC2, right here it is showing both the locations which I used in Mumbai, so much in the North Virginia, so much, right? The bill is not specific to the region. The bill is for your account. You can use one region or multiple, what do you say, the region. It will show in your services because the cost will vary from region to region for the service, same service. Right here, if you see, right, I used two regions, right? I used only storage in Mumbai. In the other region, I used the other stuff, something like that, right? So you get your bill over here, okay? And then you have the support, right? Support, like I said, all this is free. Forums, documentation, training, all that is free. If you go to support center, right, it is where you can raise tickets with AWS. So like I said, AWS has support plans, right? AWS has support plans. So you can create support cases, right? You can create support cases, right? What support cases you are going to create, right? You can say create case, and you have these three categories. One is account and billing support, one is service limit increase, one is technical support. Account and billing related means any information you want with respect to your account or billing. My bill came very high, why it came very high, what happened, those type of things. Or how will I be charged if I use something? So you can ask these type of questions, right? So they will help you. It is free, right? There is no cost for this because we are under the basic support plan, right? So you can ask something like this: general info, getting started, right? Account structure, free tier, how will I be charged, right? Something related to security, some basic questions you can ask, right? If it's a basic question, they will reply with the answer, or they will give you a link. So mostly they will give you a link. They will give you 2 or 3 lines explanation. They will give you the link. Go read this. Right. So they have a lot of documentation available. Right. So first thing is you should learn that. Right. So all documentation is available on aws.amazon.com/documentation. Anything and everything is available over here. Right. docs.amazon.aws.com or whatever. Right. So you just have to know what service you want or what you want. You just go open that and read. Right. Everything is there. It is free of cost. You don't even need an AWS account to do this. Right. So they will give you a link to this documentation, whatever it is. Right. So you can create a case for account and billing support. Anybody can create. Right. You cannot create this for technical issues. You cannot say something is not working or how do I do this in my server. Those things they will not reply. I mean, they will say, sorry, your support plan does not cover that. Right. The next is service limit increase. So what is service limit increase? So even though we say AWS, you can create as many machines as you want, or as many storage as you want, or something like that, but they have some limits. Right. They may not be hard limits. They are like soft limits. Right. So what do we mean that? Say, for example, let's take a small service called EC2. Right. EC2, basically one of the components is virtual machines, or as they call instances. Right. It's like a server. Right. So practically speaking, you can create hundreds of virtual machines. Right. That's what when we say AWS, we say it is highly scalable. At any time, anybody can come and they can create any number of machines they want. Right. But practically speaking, they will put some limit. They will say, okay, you just created your AWS account, so I'm going to allow you to create only 2 virtual machines. Nowadays, they have what do you say? For new people, they are making it a little difficult to increase the limit. So what is this limit is, it is not that you can create only 2. At present, you can create only 2. If you want to create more than 2, suppose you want to create 6 virtual machines, you have to request for a limit increase. You have to say, boss, I need 6 machines. Please increase the limit. They will usually increase it. You can just give a small description. I'm using AWS for some project. I need 6 machines. Currently, my limit is only 2. Please increase it to 6. They will do it. Right. Or I need 60. Please increase it to 60. They will do it. But by default, they have some limits. You can see that over here. It depends upon the service. Right. It is not like one, because they have a lot of services. Right. So each service will have different components, whether it is instances or security groups or some amount of storage. Right. So for a lot of people, it might be the limits itself might be enough. For some people, it is not enough. Then they need to increase certain limits. Right. So how many storage volumes you can create? Right. 300. Right. 300 TB is the total storage which you can allocate. If you want more than 300 TB, then you request for a limit increase. These are not like hard limits. Most of these are soft limits. Because if they don't have this limit and somebody comes and says, I want to create 100 virtual machines, the next person who is coming, he wants to create 3 or 4, the space might not be enough. They need to add backend infrastructure. Right. They also need to manage that thing. It is not unlimited resources, any cloud. Right. So they have a data center with some capacity. If some user is going to come and say, I want to create 100 virtual machines in one shot, for the other people, the resources are going to be fewer. So they want to give everybody a level playing field or a balance. Because sometimes when you try to launch a virtual machine, you will get an error saying insufficient capacity. That means that AWS, they don't have capacity. They will say, please try after a few minutes. So after 1 or 2 minutes you try, you will be able to create. So those things also practically you will see. I cannot show you that because it has to happen at AWS. But if you need more machines, or you need more storage, or you need more something, then you can request for a limit increase if it is not enough for you. Right. For your practice, most of it, I don't think it's a problem. You will never have to, I think, request for a limit increase, right? Because for practice, you have more than, unless you are going to create 6, 7 machines or 20 machines, I don't think you need to worry about limit increase. But practically speaking, real time you will have to, for one service or the other. Depends. You can choose what is the service you want to choose, what type of limit or what type of feature you want to enable. You can do that, right? You can choose something like right. So what is the request you want, right? In which location you want, right? What do you want? What is the new limit you want? You add that and you give a small description. It does not happen immediately. It might take up to 1 day for them to get back to you whether they are going to increase or no. Mostly they will increase. Otherwise, they will ask you some additional information, right? So that is account and billing support and service limit increase. The third one is technical support, and it says unavailable under the basic support plan. So AWS has three support plans plus the basic, so totally 4. So what are the support plans you can compare over here, right? The basic support plan is included for all AWS customers. What does it include? It includes access to account and billing support and service limit increase, right? So if you see, for example, I have one support, so my older support cases are not shown. I think after 6 months your cases get archived. You cannot see it in this list, but you will get a copy in your email. So here is a older support case I raised, right, under basic support plan. It was a general billing related question. What was it, right? So I noticed some problem. Where is that? I don't know. These people, they load more. Okay, it's down. So I noticed some information in some confusion in the billing related to this, right? So I can ask, how does that billing work? How am I going to be charged? Because some of their pricing is little confusing, right? You cannot expect one person to know all these things. You just have to learn like this. Even I cannot say I know everything in AWS. If I don't know, I know where to go find the answer. The best place is first ask them itself. Then you can go through the documentation, or if still documentation is confusing, you can clarify with them. Sometimes they themselves get confused. Then again you can go back and forth through that, right? So they also get confused, right? And then they will clarify. You can go around like this, right? You can give them an example of what you're trying to do, and then they will better understand. Okay.
So is it something which happens in a real time when you work? Not
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one, generally.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So that's why, see, the basic support is this. So if you're working in real time with a company, I recommend you have at least a developer support plan. If it is a big company, it is recommended to have a business plan, especially if you're having production workloads, because you might not know everything. And sometimes when there is a problem in AWS, if you want immediate assistance, it is not possible through the basic support plan, right? So what do these support plans provide? The basic, it is included for everybody. It is free. There is no additional cost. You get access to what do you say, the basic stuff, just the general questions. You cannot raise technical questions. Technical means it is not just problem. You can ask them how to do this. They will explain. So all that is comes under technical support. Technical support means it is not only for problems, right? If you are trying to use some service, you don't know its features, or you're trying to make something work, you are not able to get it to work, you can ask them. They will point you in the right direction, or they will give you the solution. Depends upon the support plan, right? If you have a developer support plan, all these cost money. So what is the money? First we will talk. Let us go down. The money is in the bottom, right? Developer. So developer is $29 per month, or 3% of your monthly bill, whichever is higher. Understood? It is 29 or 3% of your monthly bill, whichever is higher. If your monthly bill is 100, you pay $29. If your monthly bill is 40,000, you pay 3%, right? Whichever is higher. Earlier it used to be fixed fee of $30. I think now they have changed it in the past couple of years. Earlier developer was a fixed fee. So a lot of people used to use the developer support plan. Even if their bill was 20,000 or something, the support plan was cheap, 25 or $30. I think it used to be 35. I think it used to be flat, irrespective of your bill. But from the past 2 or 3 years, it has been changed to minimum 29 or 3%, whichever is higher. Next is the business support plan. Business is $100 or based on this slab, whichever is higher. Right? Suppose your bill is $11,000, then the first 0 to 10K you paid 10%, which is $100, right? 100 or $1,000. For the next 10K to 11K, you pay 7%, right? So it goes like that slab. So whichever is higher, minimum is 100. If your monthly usage is only $200, you still pay $100, right? And if you go to enterprise, it starts at $15,000 minimum, or according to this slab, whichever is higher, right? So what do you get under each support plan, right? So obviously, if there's a price difference, the service also is going to vary, right? The benefits you get or the features you get, right? So under the developer support plan, you get technical support. If you want to create a technical support case, you need to have at least the developer support plan, right? Otherwise that option will be grayed out, right? Otherwise that option will be grayed out. So technical support is available only during the business hours in your local time zone, right? And who handles your cases? Cloud support associate. Think of it as freshers who work at AWS tech support, okay, with developer support. So they will usually give you link to some documentation and ask you to read, right? So the SLA or the response is going to be usually for general guidance less than 24 hours, system impact less than 12 hours. Again, it depends what type of impairment it is, right? And the other stuff, right? Architectural guidance. Suppose you want to do something, okay, I want to host an Apache application on AWS, how to do it? You can ask them. They will point you to some document. They will not go in depth or specific to your case. They will give you some general guideline. Please follow this, go through this for further information, right? That is under developer support plan, and you can contact them only through this support portal. You have to create a case over here. You cannot email them, or you don't have online chat. That is not there in developer. Developer, you can only create your case over here and you can interact like this, right? You update the case, they will update the case. You update the case, they will update the case, like that, right? You will get a copy in your mail also, but you have to do it here. You cannot call them, or you cannot what do you say, have one-to-one chat or something. If required, they will call you. If they want to understand something better or some billing related information, they will call you, right? So that is the developer support plan, right? And in developer support plan, only one person can create the case. So here, if I go and say create case, right, usually only one person is allowed to create a technical support case. Suppose, like I said, you might have 3-4 people working in your account, so they cannot go and say create case by themselves. Only one user, that is usually the root user, is allowed to create the technical support case. Other people, they can just go and look at the case. They cannot create cases with their credentials. Only one person is allowed to what do you say, manage that thing, I think, right? One primary contact. Case is any number you can put, but only one primary contact, whoever you assign, they can create the support cases, right? Now for the business plan, right, we saw it costs $100 or whatever, right? And then what is included in that? You get technical support, you get 24/7 support over phone, email and chat with a cloud support engineer, right? So anybody in your AWS account can create a tech support case, right? Because in real time you will have multiple teams, multiple people working, so each fellow might have his own problem or trying to understand something. He can create a case and he can follow up. So you will have a one-to-one live chat also over here if you have a business support plan, right? It is immediate means you might have to wait for 2 or 3 minutes, but it is available always, right? And it has, what do you say, faster SLA. And architecture guidance, they go a little bit deeper into your specific use case, right? A little bit more, right? Suppose you say Apache, so AWS, they will have people working in different departments, right? So we are somebody who is working with everything. We are working with EC2, with storage, with database, with networking, all the services. We have some idea, but they will have people who are specialized in databases, or what do you say, uh, Windows or something like that, right? So they will, that appropriate person or somebody will take up your case depending upon the category which you choose, right? While creating a case, you will say, I need help with EC2. Then it will go to the EC2 team. So they will help you. They will be able to help you better, right? So they will help you with third party software also. Help you means they will not do it for you. They will give you some configuration guidelines, best practice, troubleshooting, those type of things. They cannot log into your machine unless you give permission. You cannot say log into my machine and do something for me. They will not do. If you are not able to do, and if it is something they can help, then they will ask you to provide access through TeamViewer or something like that. They will connect and they might try to do, right? It depends. Cannot say they will connect and do. It depends on what you are trying to do, right? So that is there. So enterprise is what it includes everything, right? Plus you get a technical support manager, or what do you say, a specific what do you say, technical account manager who is assigned to you, right? It is for very big companies, big implementation. So they have, what do you say, you can give your architect to them. They are going to check it through their architects and review all that, right? A lot of in-depth stuff, right? I have not seen anybody use enterprise, right? We used to use developer or business, right? Real time, while practicing you don't need, but in real time it is recommended to have at least developer. If it is a little big company, they don't mind spending a little more. The business plan is good, right? And then they get access to this online self-paced labs. So if you are a big company, you're working for a big company, they can get the enterprise plan, and the AWS will give you some free online labs that your employees can use. But again, I've not seen anybody really use the labs, because anybody can create an account and practice, right? Those labs are also available, but it's really not practically very useful, right? What is practically useful, you understand what you want to do, you open the documentation, you follow, do it in your account, right? So if you want, there are third party sites with which AWS has linked up, called quick labs. Not only AWS, other providers also, right? You can go here and you can do some quick labs, right? Suppose I say creating a virtual machine, there will be a lab to do that, but it is really not, what do you say, useful or anything. The same documentation is available in AWS. You can just do it in your own AWS account, or you can create an account over here and you can do it. It supports Google Cloud, AWS, and what do you say, uh, different platforms, right? For AWS, it's not really, I don't think it is useful, right? It is better if you can do it on your own AWS account, right? So they have these also, but you can do this yourself. You can create an account, you can buy labs. Some companies, they give you coupons, right? They will give you coupons for $25, because some labs are free, some labs cost you a little money, right? Credits. So some companies, they purchase credits and give you, right, for their employees. Or like I said, if you have an enterprise plan, these self-paced labs are included. So your company's employees, they can log in and they can practice something, right? So you have this site, but practically I don't recommend you use that, because all the documentation. So these are the support plans, right? So if you are using real time, if you are working for a big rich company, please recommend business support plan. If it is a small startup developer, right? Because it makes your work also easier. Otherwise, you have to break your head for certain things. It is better to straight away ask them and get the answer. Because we use this a lot, right? In my company, maybe for the clients we don't use because they expect us to do the work, right? So if it is your own, I mean, if you're doing for implementing for your own company, right, uh, then it's very useful, right? You get fast answers to certain things. Now I have got used to it, but initially when I was working with AWS in the first couple of years, it was very useful because it was new for almost everybody. Even for the person from whom I learned AWS in 2014-15, we were all just exploring and doing it ourselves. The support was useful, right? Quickly we could get answer, but now with experience we know most of the stuff. But still, for our production and practical stuff, we have business support plan for one account, and for one account developer support plan, I think. Yeah. So those are
Okay.
support plans. So it is recommended you have it, especially if you are having a production workload, important stuff, right? You get the business support, and it is not fixed. It's not like you get the support plan, you have to always use it. You can change the support plan whenever you want. Suppose you are implementing something, so you can choose the business support plan after your implementation is complete and after it has become stable, right? After 3-4 months, you can remove the business support plan, you can go back to basic. Okay, it's not like you have to stick with basic for life, for with business for life, right? So whenever you want, you can do, but don't do it, don't be very smart, and whenever you have an issue, don't change the support plan and create a issue. After your issue is solved, don't deactivate the support plan. You can do that, but what happens if you do like that 2 or 3 times? They will block you from, what do you say, support plan. Okay, so don't change it frequently. So now for example, I can go say change, and I can change to the support plan. Now say I have some issue, I'm under basic support plan, technical support I can't get, so I can go to change support plan, right? And I can change the support plan, but obviously I need the root credentials, I'm not logged in as root, right? But I can choose a new support plan, right? And then what happens, it is activated immediately, you don't have to wait for anything, right? You change the support plan, you go, you create your technical support question, you get your answer. Then what people will do, they will again go change and change back to basic. Then what happens, they will charge you for the support plan on a prorated basis, right? It is what, it is $100 per month. So if you use the support plan for 2 days, probably it will cost you $6, right? So some people try to do that. Then what happens, 2 or 3 times you activate, deactivate in 2 days, they will block you from support plan. I've seen that also happening. So don't do that, right? So if it is a new implementation or something, you take a support plan, you use it for a month or two. Once your infrastructure is stable and everything is working, you can go back to the basic support plan. Afterwards, again after a month or so, if you want, again you can activate a plan. Please use it for at least a month. Don't just do it for a day or two, right? That is headache. Okay, so you can change your support plan either way, anytime you want.
Okay.
Okay, so that's about it, I think, for today. And one more quick thing, right? So from now onwards, any service that I'm going to talk about or anything, right? So the first thing you can check is documentation. So where do you start off with? Please go to the FAQs, right? Suppose I'm talking about AWS billing, you can say AWS billing FAQ. These are simple, what do you say, questions with respect to a particular topic, right? You can go to the documentation will be a little longer, but say for example, we are talking about AWS S3, you can say AWS S3 FAQ. S3 is a storage service, which is what we'll be starting tomorrow. So if you go here, you will have all the general information, cost information, a little bit of technical information, security information, all that. These are some questions you may have, or you may not remember to ask. Or for example, if you want S3 with S3 cost related information, you can go to S3 and you can go to the billing category. It will show you how much does S3 cost, how it is billed, just a high level explanation. So for every service you have this. Either you can open the detailed documentation, or you can at least read the FAQs after the class. It will be a few pages, few questions, right? You can just read with example they will be giving. I will also be explaining, but how do you quickly read, right? A high level idea about what is that service, FAQ. You don't have to open its document or anything, right? So first thing we saw is creating an AWS account. You can say how to create AWS account. I'm not opening anybody else's blog or YouTube video. All this is in AWS website itself. So here you have a steps to create and activate AWS account. So whatever I explained step by step is here, right? Payment method, all this. I can take, copy, paste, print this and give it to you. It is waste of my time and your time, right? Everything is available online. That's why I said you note down the heading, you put the heading followed by AWS, you will get all the information, right? It is pretty straightforward. Step by step, you will have screenshot. If you want video, you can watch this girl giving the video, right? Everything is there. Okay. So basically, pretty much whatever you want to do, you put that, you will get it. Whatever I am showing you will also be available in the documentation. So because I didn't create AWS or somebody didn't, we are just using AWS. How to use it? It is well detailed by AWS, right?
Okay.
Okay. So bookmark that docs.aws.amazon.com, and you just go through that well architected framework every day, a couple of pages, and yeah.
Okay. So tomorrow is going to be S3, right?
Yeah, so tomorrow we will start with S3, because first if we go through some services, then we can go through the security creating users. Because now itself, if I start saying creating users, then it will be confusing. So first you can use the root account to log in, create your AWS account, right? And try to log in and see whether it is activated, or if they're asking for additional information. You do that sometime after the class gets over, right? And tomorrow we will start with S3. If you want in advance, you can just go through the FAQs in S3. If you have the free time, please go through the FAQs. You don't have to go through any detailed information. Just put AWS S3 FAQs and you get a rough idea of what I'm going to talk. And tomorrow when I explain, probably it will be a little more clearer. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So why I'm asking you to go through these multiple sources, multiple things of information is because it is one way to get experience, right? So, because I have worked, or people who have worked, they know what is there, and we don't do everything every day, right? So suppose you take the architect exam, there are a lot of topics, but practically is everybody going to use all of that? No, right? So some things you should just have an idea. Okay, what is this service? So what is there? Okay, when it is required, okay, you should pull it up and go in detail, right? So don't try to do everything in detail, okay, unless it is specific, unless you have a specific use case, or you're say for example you're a DBA or something, you're into database, then probably you want to look in depth into RDS, right? So if you try to go in depth into everything, then you will never finish what do you say, learning AWS or start working, right? First is to get a rough idea, start working, then continue learning. Okay. Exam, don't worry, exam is pretty straightforward. In 2 months or 2.5 months, if you spend some time every day, 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours every day, you should be able to clear the exam. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So tomorrow we'll catch up at same 8 o'clock in the morning, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And can you ping me your email address also, both of you? in the WhatsApp group. I'll share the material or whatever as the class progresses.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Ping your email address in there. Okay. So we'll catch up tomorrow then at 8
Sure.
o'clock.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.